Hello and welcome. I'm Sandy Franks, Executive Publisher for Taipan Publishing Group. Here with me today is Taipan's global traveler and co-editor of the investment advisory service Taipan Insider, Sarah Nunnally. Sarah brings an exciting approach to the world of international investing, traveling to such countries as Vietnam, Morocco, South Africa. Sarah turns the focus on emerging markets to uncover new investment opportunities. Sarah, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Sandy.
I have a couple questions for you. And the first thing I want to talk about is your area of specialty about uncovering these opportunities in emerging markets and how you got started into that. So let's just go ahead and just jump right in and tell us all about that.
Well, it's kind of an interesting way that I got started. I didn't start by looking at international markets. I started by looking at commodities. And the more that I looked at commodities, the more I found that the companies I was talking about were international companies. Mm-hmm. So we were already going overseas but didn't even realize it. And then I took a little trip to Samso in February, which is the worst month to go because it's very cold. Samso is a tiny island off the coast of Denmark. It won a contest in 1998 to try to achieve 100% renewable energy sustainability within 10 years. And it was a global competition, and this island took on the challenge head on. They used wind power and solar power and biomass in order to achieve 100% renewable energy. The only thing that they were having trouble with were cars and vehicles. But besides that, this tiny little island became 100% renewable energy sufficient in less than 10 years, and even created enough power to send it back to the mainland.
Wow. So you went there and you saw this firsthand.
I did. Yeah, I spoke to the folks that were running the program, and they gave me a tour of the island. Unfortunately, I wasn't allowed to go up into the windmills, though you can, but because it was February and so cold, they were closed. But I saw the windmills, I saw the solar panels, I saw the biomass facilities, and it was a really impressive project for such a small country.
Right. So that sort of was, say, the launch or the kickoff of you being able to travel to different countries then, because once you found what was happening here, then you figured, wow, there's a lot of other things. So since then, you have been to different places. So let's talk a little bit about some of those, where you've been.
I've been to a number of different places, and a lot of different places, I'd have to say. I started out with a trip to Spain and Morocco, and it was really a study in how different a frontier country is from a developed country. And frontier countries are even one step newer, I could say, than emerging markets. It's the next. It's kind of like the zygote, I guess you could call it, or just before an emerging market is being born. Okay. And its proximity to Europe, Morocco's proximity to Europe, made it very interesting to kind of contrast it with a developed country like Spain. So we looked at some of the examples of companies that are starting to branch out and starting to make connections over the Mediterranean to these developed nations. And that kind of sparked what I would call like a gateway country relationship. And I saw the same thing happening with my most recent trip between Italy and Libya. Libya is just coming onto the stage. They have a lot of energy potential, but they also have a lot of money because of their energy. So there's a lot of cross investment between Libya and, say, Italy. But you can't necessarily invest in Libya, so you look to who they're investing with, and that's why we're calling them gateway countries. So those are two kind of examples of that area. And then I've been to places like Vietnam to look at what that area of the world is doing. South Africa is another recent trip. Eastern Europe is another interesting area. And also Latin America is what I think is going to be a very interesting hotspot for 2010.
So are the countries then that you are targeting to travel, are they all under this gateway umbrella idea, or is it sort of a mix of?
It's a mix. The gateway idea is a way to bring in these frontier countries that might be interesting investment opportunities but aren't quite there yet for investors, but it's something that investors should be looking at 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. So we're looking at kind of a coupling of two countries. That's why I'm talking about Italy with Libya or Spain with Morocco, to give investors an opportunity to look into the frontier countries.
Now, just keeping this theme going of all of these countries that you're going to, whether they're frontier or a developing country, what are the things that you think readers should be aware of as far as topics or issues that are coming to the forefront in these type of countries?
The main thing is the stability within the regions. When you're talking about Libya and you're talking about
You
a
don't
very
necessarily think, right?
a very controversial leader, they have a horrible history, particularly in relation to the U.S. So I think geopolitical stability is the key when you're looking at frontier markets. The next stage up, when you're looking at emerging markets, the thing that you want to focus on is foreign direct investment. How much money is coming into the country? How much interest from other governments is in this particular country? So can they sustain that growth? Are they peaking? Have they already peaked? And for developed countries, it's stability in another way. It's financial and economic stability. Are they crumbling? What areas are propping up the economy right now, and are they secure enough to invest in? So it's kind of like a tiered investment philosophy.
What do you think are some of the threats that an emerging economy faces?
Interestingly enough, and ironically enough, I think the main threat to an emerging economy is a developed economy. When you're talking about export-based countries, not necessarily China, because they've pretty much developed they're developing their own domestic market. But when you're talking about an export-based economy, they're relying on the developed markets in order to fuel their own economy. So when developed markets have problems like the financial crisis that we've all been through,
Right.
emerging markets get whacked big time as well. So the health of an emerging market kind of depends on the health of the economic situation in the developed economy. So if the developed economies are improving, you're going to see emerging markets improve. If they're not, then it could adversely affect emerging markets more severely, I think, than investors may realize.
And let's take that one step further down the ladder as far as, these very beginning economies, how they must be even more severely impacted than, say, an emerging economy. Is that right? Wrong?
That's right. And when I was looking into going to Africa and finally choosing South Africa, one of the things I found was that funding, just in aid, was being diminished by a third at least because of the problems due to the financial crisis. So when you translate that into the corporate world, you're looking at magnified losses in foreign direct investment. So it impacts emerging markets very severely.
Now, Sarah, you mentioned earlier that you'd gone to South America. Let's talk a little bit about that and what you see happening there.
Well, South America and all of Latin America, but mainly South America, is going to be a very interesting place as well. Brazil in particular, you're talking about the World Cup coming there in 2014 and the Olympic Summer Games in 2016. And they've got a lot of work to do before they're ready for the influx of tourists and the influx of athletes as well. So you're talking about major infrastructure upgrades, you're talking about technological upgrades, and just the general atmosphere is going to be ripe for investment opportunity, particularly in Brazil, but also for, I think, all of Latin America. I visited Chile, and that's going to be a very strong point for Latin America to grow. It's the most stable economy in South America. And you branch off from there and look at some of the frontier countries like Bolivia, which has an underground lithium project going on, or Peru, which is also a very interesting place. But Brazil is going to be the major hotspot for 2010 moving forward. And it's going to bring the whole of South America with it.
Okay, and I have one more question for you. Just sort of forward thinking here. What areas or sectors of these emerging economies do you think that investors should be aware of for 2010?
The main sector that I'm pretty keen on right now, and it's kind of a throwback to my commodity-based investing, is alternative energy.
Okay.
I think particularly with the Copenhagen Climate Change Conference that happened in December, you're going to see a major push for alternative energy and environmental technology, green programs. There's actually a program that's being put forth to create a green fund. There are 4 different countries that are proposing this green fund that will help emerging markets deal with climate change problems such as flooding or drought and those types of issues. So I think technology in the environmental sector and alternative energy is going to be a major, major topic for 2010.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you, Sandy.
Well, our time is up. If you'd like to learn more about Sarah and Taipan Insider, please visit our website, taipanpublishinggroup.com.